You are listening to the Earplug Podcast Network, a Fanboys Inc. production.
Can you dig it, nigga, sucker? Ooh, yeah!
We boo you because you're both a couple of world-class international a-holes.
Time to play the game.
Welcome to the Faces and Heels podcast, where we are emerging from the aftermath of Hell in a Cell, and the Juice Box Babes are going to be here lining up. Lewis, look up behind you. They're going to be showing up in a minute because tonight our special guest, Big Juicy.
Ah! I know her. I met her. I know her.
Yeah,
I
blood,
know
sweat,
her.
and tears.
I did. Hard fought battle last Friday. I was heartbroken. So I had to go console her. I had to go and console her afterwards, and I kind of freaked her out because I mentioned Jack
It did not
Purcell.
freak me out. The adrenaline had to come down post-match. I can't describe it other than the body needs to come down from everything it went through.
Yes, and you went through a very hard fought battle. Uncle Joe was in the house. Hey, Uncle Joe, what's going on? But before we get into stuff with Juicy, Hell in a Cell. That was I fell asleep, but there was a hell of a match toward the end. What do you guys think about that?
I thought the hell of the match was the opening match.
Oh, that was good. That was a good one. I stayed away from that, but I'm talking about Cody and Seth.
It was okay. I mean, considering what he went through, which was unbelievable, inhuman. Yeah, I mean, it was incredible that he did anything, much less the match they pulled off.
I can't even imagine what he felt like getting ready for that match, knowing he had that injury in the match, in the moment with that injury, and what he's like today. I hands down to the man because I don't think I could do that, and he handled himself like a true professional.
Oh, absolutely. I think he's really trying to live up to his dad's name, not so much of his older brother. I really think that he wants to live up to Dusty's name. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, legend has it. I mean, we all seen it. Dusty wrestled with broken legs, broken arms, stitches in his noggin. Dusty was just like he bunkhouse brawls all the way. I mean, he got into that ring and he worked no matter what. And I think Cody's wants to be just like his dad. I mean, to the point of maybe harming himself to live up to that name.
Yeah, I mean, I could only imagine how much worse that injury is after having done that match. I mean, I'm no doctor, but I mean, that was hard to imagine. Just really hard to look at. And Will Yates
for
says,
sure.
"Hola." Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, whatever. I mean, considering the injury, I thought it was a good match. It wasn't any that whole show to me was a bit repetitive and kind of the typical WWE premium event. But I thought that opening match was unbelievable. Like great pay-per-view level match. The rest of the show felt like a house show to me.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
But
I agree.
I loved I mean, how could you go wrong? Bianca Belair, Becky Lynch, and Asuka. I mean, what an unbelievable conglomeration of talent. So I was out of my mind during that match and just thought this is going to set the bar so high. who's going to live up
Yeah,
to
I
that?
was just upset that my wife lost.
Yeah, she'll be back.
Oh, I know. I know. She'll be back, and then we'll go back to Japan and be happy.
Yeah, yeah, most likely.
And Uncle Joe, Uncle Joe comes back and says repetitive is an understatement. Wow.
No, it
Yeah.
is what it is. But anyway, we don't want to take up too much time with Hell in the
No.
Cell, but I just think it was worth mentioning. But we're really jazzed to have you here, Big Juicy. So thank you for taking the time and being here. And Lewis got to see you at Blood, Sweat, and Tears, which I'm sorry, I had my graduation I needed to go to, so I couldn't be there.
Yeah, you finally graduated. Congratulations. After all
Yeah.
these years,
Yep.
you finally graduated.
Right.
I mean, preschool. I'm proud of you, Jack. You're finally going to elementary school. I'm very proud of you.
Just too much time at the drawing table. I wasn't
I
paying
am
attention to 2+2.
very proud of you, Jack.
Thank you.
That's you're
dear
welcome.
Lord.
Ju- Juicy. I mean, you dropped the belt on Friday night, and it broke my heart. It was a hard fought battle. The ring, being in a shorty, did that throw you off at all? Because it threw me off watching everyone in a shorty. Did that throw off your game during that match?
I mean, working in a short boy as opposed to a tall boy, like, it doesn't, with me personally, maybe the high flyers, but like,
Mhm.
stay on the ground. So the ring doesn't bother me at all. As long as I can bump in it, that's great. I don't need to worry
Okay.
about the height. I'm not doing any suies and corner flying dives. I'm okay.
All right, because I when you came out, you got in the ring. I was like, man. I mean, I was like, wow, is she going to be thrown off because they're in the short boy and not, and not a normal ring? And then I was also worried too about the ropes. The ropes didn't look that taut. I was like, wow,
We
what
had
is
to play
going on
around.
here?
We had to play around with the ring a little bit during setup, and they had to come out and check them, I think, a couple times, as you saw
Yeah.
during the show. But I mean, again, work with what you got. You got a rope with loose, or you got a ring with loose ropes. I mean, you got to adapt, and instead of doing that, whatever you're gonna do off the ropes, or readjust. So I mean, you'd always have to be able to adapt on and think on the fly and change things if that's the case.
All right. Well, you were definitely ripped off that night. I mean, definitely ripped off, and I
She's a
hope.
cheater.
What's that?
She's a cheater. She hasn't played fair.
No, that's right. Yeah, it was definitely it was a blatant miscarriage of justice. And when you get your rematch, I'm gonna be there, and hopefully this guy will be there as well, and we will be cheering you on. Uncle Joe comes back with another comment. Jack is mature for his age. Wink, wink. Jack, go ahead.
All right, so let's back it up a little bit because we kind of just threw everybody in, and some of our listeners, I know you because I know some of them have seen you with me. I know at the Retro World Expo you were there, and I know a few of our listeners were also there in the audience. But we talk about this a lot. How New England is just such an embarrassment of riches for pro wrestling.
Mhm.
It's really something that I think you can kind of take for granted, and especially having done a lot of the comic book convention circuit, sometimes I found myself in places like Omaha, Nebraska, and it's hard to find a pro wrestling show out there. I mean, there's a culture, but it's not like here where it's such a rich tapestry. So I guess to begin, are you from New England? Because I think Westfield, Massachusetts might be.
Yep. So I am from Western Mass. I am from Westfield. I was born in the Berkshires in North Adams. Spent some time down south up until about first grade. My dad was in the military growing up. As I was growing up, so I was down there for a little couple of years. Moved back up here, and I've been in Western Mass in Westfield ever since. So yeah, my heart lies in New England.
Awesome. I got my teaching.
I just saw the comment.
Oh.
For those of you
Eric.
listening on the Earplug Podcast Network, Eric Hunting says, "Good evening, gentlemen, and Big Juicy."
Eric, how Hunting, such a big supporter, big juicy and all I do. I appreciate him so much.
Yeah, he's an awesome fan. I get to see him at so many different shows. It's cool.
Absolutely.
But I got my teaching degree at Westfield State, so I have a little experience in Westfield and Mrs. Murphy's Donuts when I'm on my way there to Connecticut. You're familiar, I hope, it sounds like?
Yes. Oh,
Okay,
Mrs. Murphy
okay.
is so good.
Yeah. Mrs. Murphy's
And
putting some
donut
weight
dip
on
in
me.
Holyoke.
Oh, I know.
Or
I
not
got a
Holyoke,
maple.
West Springfield.
Yeah. Oh, no, right on Riverdale Road. Yeah, it got me back up over the 200-pound mark. So I got to get back under control because those maple bacon donuts are to kill for.
They're so good.
But
Can never go wrong with a classic like blueberry cake.
yeah, my girlfriend's all about that. But okay. Well, we'll meet in the middle and just say, how about the sprinkled vanilla frosted?
All right, I can accept that.
Okay. All right. Eric Hunting's back and says, lots of love for Big Juicy in Hunting household. All right, Eric. Nice. Well, we want to give, I mean, we obviously know Eric is very familiar with you already. And that's awesome. I think that some of our listeners like Eric are going to get to learn something new tonight, but hopefully we're going to get some of our other listeners who weren't on the winning team yet some good information about you.
Yes, Will Yates
says,
has a question.
what companies have you worked for in New England? New to your guest.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
Limitless.
In New England, let's see. I've gone.
What's up, Neff?
I worked for Blitzkrieg Pro. I've worked for Western Mass Wrestling, Pioneer Valley Pro Wrestling. I did a couple tapings for Proving Ground. I've also worked for someone who's just putting in their New England New
England Extreme Wrestling, and that will be my that's my adopted nephew. My adopted nephew, Carl Bird.
And WWE, there it is. New World
There
Wrestling
you go.
Extreme. I finally got it out there. I worked for them. I've done I did a taping up at Chaotic. I did a show for Limitless. I've got my foot in the door there. Vacationland Pro Wrestling. A lot of stuff in New England. Blood, Sweat, and Tears Wrestling in Connecticut. I've done a lot of wrestling within New England, but now I'm looking to like branch outward more.
Nice. And I guess I'm just going to piggyback on this because we're kind of skipping ahead, but this is a question I was going to ask you. I just wondered, do you feel like with something like IWTV that you can use that as a tool to do what you just stated and branch out beyond New England because so many people get to see that?
Absolutely. I've been fortunate enough to have been on a couple shows that have been booked to either edit and then put out product on IWTV or have been live streamed on IWTV. And I'm so grateful when I get those opportunities because it does give a larger audience base to be able to view my work. And, from there, it just takes one live stream match or one post-production viewing, and then it's hey, send this to this person or this goes to this promotion, and hopefully by word of mouth or viewing things on IWTV I can get that further exposure and continue to network and be able to travel more, like I'm hoping to do. So I'm super grateful that IWTV exists.
Yes, yeah, it really is an incredible tool. And I always find it fascinating, some of the behind the scenes aspects of pro wrestling, which, anything you don't feel like answering, we can move on. But like you kind of alluded to it, like how much of your time is spent with networking and maybe sending out links to matches, or do most of the companies kind of contact you? Like how much time do you spend trying to cultivate new relationships?
I mean, I've been lucky enough to get some opportunities through mutual friends or like people who have worked for those companies. So they're like, hey, like, how did you get your foot in the door? I'll try and network with people I already know that work for companies. Or I haven't been bold enough to just kind of like drop a wrestling resume and say, hey, this is me. This is my list of accolades or blah, blah, blah. You should consider me. I haven't gone that far just yet, but I have had companies also, instead of going through mutual people that I know that have worked for companies, I've had companies contact me, which has been cool because I'm like, wow, someone's heard of me. Like I'm just this tiny blip in this huge area in New England of itself, but just like the country at large of like one worker amongst thousands, if not more. And I'm like, oh, you reached out to little old me. Like to me, that's like a cool feeling in and of itself. Is like geeky and minor as it seems, but like, hey, I exist and someone noticed me. Like that's still kind of cool. So I've done a little bit of both, but I haven't been bold enough to reach out with a full resume and say, hey, here I am. Keep me in your back pocket.
That brings me to a question. What was it like? This is the question I've been asking a lot of our guests lately because I find it very interesting. What was it like the first time that you walked out from behind the curtain and you seen a sign with your name on it from someone out in the crowd?
I will never forget. So the first time I saw like actual fans in attendance with signs for me, it was um, I want to say it was one of the last Moose Lodge shows to run in Westfield for
Okay.
Blitzkrieg Pro. And that was back when, before Big Juicy got a big facelift. And when I say facelift, I mean like I invested in myself and the gear and all of that stuff. Um, it was my Blitzkrieg Pro debut. And of course, being a Westfield local, I was able to get a lot of people in there that I knew. And it's funny, on the side, one of my shoot jobs is I work as a dance teacher at a local dance studio. So, like, I had students from my dance studio there with signs like, Willa All Stars Dance Center loves Big Juicy and all this stuff. And, like, from that moment until now, when I see stuff like that, I still get that same like, oh my god, are they talking about me? Like, who am I to be on someone's sign and like mean something to someone? And that's so cool. Like, I don't think that feeling will never not be genuine and feel special. And like, I don't think it'll never not mean something to me. And I feel like if you're in this and it doesn't mean something to you at some point, there's something wrong or there's
Okay.
maybe a disconnect. But like for me, anytime I see that, and especially the first time, I just remember standing there being like, wow, that's me. That's me on that piece of paper. I remember being that person holding up a sign for someone else. And now the tables have turned. Like it still gets to me and it's still very heartfelt. And I take those moments in really, really deeply every time I see that.
Because I seen like just this past Friday night, seeing you with the kids was just like amazing. You came out before the match and you just everyone in the front row. You touched just about everyone's hand, and even after the match, after the outcome, you still touched everyone's hands. And then you sat down at your merch table, and I remember this one little girl and her dad ran across the whole auditorium to come and see you. And this is shortly before I came over to see you.
Mm.
And you got right up, and the little girl hugged you, and all kind. And I was like, that is top class right there. And that was like, wow, that little girl was there with you for a while. It was like
Yeah,
so cool, so touching.
those moments that like at the end of all of this, like those are the things that I remember the most. It's not like, oh, this spot got the biggest pop, or like, oh, I got this many titles in my whole wrestling career. Like those aren't going to be the things that I remember. Like at the end of the day, it's like those interactions with fans. I don't know. I'm just a people person, so like when I'm able to give those moments, especially to the kids, like at the end of the day, like those are the things that mean a lot to me. Like I work with kids. It's part of my shoot job between teaching dance and my and everything else that I do. Like having those moments and being able to say like, hey, I gave someone's kid that special memory that hopefully they'll be talking about for the whole drive home. Like you can't beat that in my eyes.
Just amazing. Jack?
Yeah, I mean that's huge. And piggybacking on that, do you remember the first sign that you made and maybe at what show was it at? Who was it for?
Ooh.
Oh God. I mean, so I didn't start going to like wrestling events until like high school or
Okay.
like the freshman, sophomore year of college. And I remember it was in Cleveland, Ohio. I was there visiting my sister, and my dad had surprised us with impromptu WWE tickets, and it was this big sign for the Usos. And I did the whole half split tribal face paint because that was the gimmick at the time.
Nice.
Oh, I went all out. I did half of my face. My sister did her other half of her face. It was a wild time. And then I don't remember. I made it double sided. I remember the Usos. I don't remember who I made the other side for, or who was on the other side of the sign. It's gonna drive me crazy. And now I'm gonna go through all my pictures after this and look for it because I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight until I figure out who it was. It was for the Usos, and I did the whole nine, the face paint. I think I was wearing an Uso shirt too, like Oos, man, Oos for life back then. Oh my god, that was my first time for sure.
Nice job, Oos. One thing that I found is, and this is just a funny quick aside because I know Marcy is one of our listeners. The most embarrassing commission I ever did was of the Usos. And one of our listeners, Marcy, this is years back, was going to a meet and greet with the Usos. And she commissioned me to do a piece of each of them. And I had this clever idea. I had these sketch covers, and I did half of one of their faces on each. And there was room to have them sign it. I reversed the face paint. I had the face paint on the wrong Uso. And
on the wrong Oos.
yeah, it wasn't a great moment. And I gave it to her for free. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Hopefully they'll get a chuckle out of this. And they didn't even notice.
Yeah, they're probably just all right. Sign next. Sign next.
They said, did you draw this? No.
Right. Nice. Way to bring it full circle, Louis.
Yes.
Thank you. I try. Juicy, where did the name come from?
Oh my god, this is freaking anomaly of a story. All right. No, buckle up, boys, because it's going to be a time. So, you see, through and through.
Come forward a little bit. You keep cutting out.
I'm sorry. Ugh. Okay, better? Are we good?
A little bit.
Oh. So, current Big Juicy babyface through and through. Big Juicy is not my first gimmick. When I first started training and when I was training and I first got the blessing from Father Kevin Landry to start working shows.
Holyoke. Okay.
Yes, Holyoke.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Landry's Pro Wrestling Combine, shameless plug here. In Holyoke, Massachusetts. Kevin goes, yep, we're going to start you off as a heel. Okay. So, not worrying about the name and everything, I was focused on getting ring gear because back then, I mean, I'm not a toothpick now, but back then I definitely was not a toothpick when I first started wrestling. And I was like, got to worry about getting the custom gear, finding someone to put something together, because I can't just order something off eLucha or, high spots like most people, right? So I was worried on that and moves and this and that. Come day of the show, they're like, kid, what's your name? I don't know. Didn't get that far. So this guy, he goes by Holyoke Joe is how he's known. Holyoke Joe says, you're gonna be Roxy Star. Okay, now think about the name Roxy Star, where you might Google that and find that on other types of websites not wrestling related.
Like the Mardi Gras down the road.
Yeah. So I was like, first match coming up at a school show at a Shut Up and Wrestle, shitting bricks, terrified. I was like, sure, I'll go by whatever you want to call me. Like, you could call me like from around the block, and I would be like, sure, sounds good. So it's like Roxy Star, great. Had my first match. I stuck with it for a couple matches. I started developing a program and a storyline with Dajay Simone. I'm in the middle of one of my matches with Dajae, putting heat on her. And all of a sudden I hear in the crowd, Juicy, yeah, Juicy girl, woo, like, and I look, there's like these 3-4 bikers standing in the back of the audience cheering. Keep in mind, I'm not registering most of it till afterwards because I'm greener than the grass outside after a good water and treatment. And I'm not worried about what the crowd's saying to me in the moment. I'm like, he, XYZ, get through the match, 1, 2, 3. So afterwards, show ends. I come out afterwards, still in gear. The guy comes up to me, goes, "Did you hear me cheering for you? Yeah, I'm a juicy girl, blah, blah, blah." And then so these kept chanting, "Juicy, juicy," and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I took it and I ran with it, and eventually the storyline was to pan out that Dajae would do a heel turn on me and I would have a face turn. And so I dropped Roxy Star. She died with the heel. I picked up Big Juicy, centered it around a juice gimmick. And here we are today.
Nice.
Very good.
Big Juicy given to me. Long story short, Big Juicy was given to me by a group of bikers that I didn't know.
You were in the right place at the right time.
I guess. Well, I mean, I had to be there. I was booked on the card. They were in the right place at the right time.
Right. That's more accurate.
Well, okay. That answers my question. Orange hair. Why orange, and is that because of the juice, or why?
No, I mean, so I'm a natural brunette. I don't know if you can see those little bits of roots coming in. I got my hair done a couple weeks ago. I'm a natural brunette. I did have red hair for a very long time, and there was no rhyme or reason other than one day my father looked at me and I was like, "Dad, I want to dye my hair. What should I do?" He goes, "Dye red, kid." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, I'm gonna look obnoxious." Did it? Worked. And I had wanted to do the orange for a while. It's not that far out from the red. I mean, I have red underneath Kit Rose here right now. I put it up. But I wanted the orange because I was channeling my inner, and this is going to be like a music reference. I was channeling my inner Hayley Williams, the lead singer of Paramore. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the band. But it's like an alternative rock emo band, if you will. And I wanted to draw inspiration from her, so I decided to dye my hair orange. And then people very quickly pointed out, "Oh, there's other indie workers that also just dyed their hair orange, or you're like that girl from NXT." I was like, "Thanks, guys."
Right. I mean, that's got to be the tricky thing too, is I think like you're an unmistakable talent. Like when you're on a show, no one's mixing you up for anyone, but
No, not at all.
But the hair itself is challenging because, like you said, NXT's got this one and that one, WWE, AEW. I mean, we've got green hair, we got blue hair, we got orange hair. Us is half and half. I mean, how do you figure out an original angle on that? I don't know. But here's the thing that
Go ahead, sorry.
This is what I think works, though. And what I've always noticed and kind of leads into my next question is that your hair doesn't seem random. Your hair seems like, A, it kind of fits your character, and B, it completely matches your gear.
That's where I was going.
If I'm going off the gear, I mean, if you're looking at everything, it's pretty much got every color on the spectrum covered, so I have room to play.
Yeah, no, and I wonder too, like when I saw your gear, all I was thinking is like, are there tributes to any of your favorite wrestlers on there? Because there were certain elements of it that I was looking at, and it made me think, oh, that reminds me of this wrestler or that one. Is any of that a tribute, or is that something that the designer just kind of threw at you?
So it's funny that you mentioned the wrestler, because the wrestling kind of shout outs, because I haven't even thought of it that way. So I'd be super interested to hear your perspective on that. I was actually more so referencing personal interests of mine. So like I am obsessed with Lisa Frank. I love Lisa Frank. Let's just talk about it real quick. Lisa Frank makeup palette. Lisa Frank makeup brush holder. I even go to Walmart during back to school season and buy Lisa Frank folders.
Wow.
Oh, and don't forget Lisa Frank makeup brush. So yeah, to say that I like Lisa Frank is an understatement. Um, she is everything that I love. It's loud, it's proud, it's obnoxious. I'm not that like I mean, yes, I am a lot to handle, but I am a lot. So it's loud and out there like me. Yes, I'm obnoxious. I'll even say it. Um, so that's where a lot of the bright colors and like on one set of gear I have like multi-animal print fabric for most of the bodysuit for it. That's where that comes into play. The fruit, I told the gear designer, hey, throw whatever fruits you like on there. These are the ones that I like, are my favorites. And then the checkerboard pattern, like the shout outs on one of my gear to the just like the I have the traditional black and white, and then on another set I have orange and black. That's for nothing other than I just really like that pattern. It like holds me down to like my punk roots. Like I really like love grunge and punk music, so that kind of brought that into my gear for me. But it's not wrestling inspired, so if you have takes on it, like I'd love to hear it.
Well, it's really interesting because the black and white thing, like the pattern on that, when you mentioned punk rock, makes a lot of sense. But the context I thought was like, I was thinking hardcore Holly, and I was even thinking like Owen and
Oh,
Coco Beware when they
snap.
were that tag team and they had like
Yes.
the black
High
and white
energy.
high energy. Thank you. When they had the trim like that, it reminded me of those guys. So I just, I didn't see the correlation, but I just didn't know if there was a nod in there somewhere.
No, but now that you say that, I wish I had a cooler thing other than I like punk music and bright colors.
Well, no, but you
Go
know what?
ahead and steal it. Go ahead and steal it. You can do it. Go
But I
ahead.
think what works about it is that it's authentic. I mean, bottom line is it's like any kind of art, which of course we love talking about the art of pro wrestling, but it's the nice thing about what you're doing is it's authentic and you can read your own stuff into it and you're not out there telling people like this is what you have to think. It's just here's me and whatever you take from it is what you took from it, but it's not damaging your character or your performance.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So like you kind of threw it in there like that it's authentically you. And what you get in the ring, like what you see is what you get. Like I'm loud, I make faces, I mean, you tell me. Like you see, you see stuff. There's not a face that I think I don't make from bell to bell uh, by the end of a match. But you said it, being authentically you, and that's what it is in the ring. Like what you see is what you get. My persona in the ring is really just me, like turned up with some fancy "I'm gonna pick you up and put you down" moves thrown in between. Um, I don't want to try and work to force something that's not me, because I feel like you lose a lot of that genuine enjoyment on the work end, but also the receiving end. Like plenty of matches and attended plenty of shows where like you can tell that the workers in the ring are trying too hard to get the crowd behind them for whether it be a gimmick or a certain comedy spot they're trying to go for. And like if you can't authentically be behind it, how are they supposed to receive it that way?
Right. Right.
So
100%. And, I think we talk about this a lot too, where when you bring reality to a storyline, whether it's AEW, whether it's Blitzkrieg Pro, whatever it may be, it really truly enhances what's happening. And I think so often that's the case. I mean, AEW have been brilliant about the MJF thing, which I think is a big work just from a fan perspective. I have no inside information, but I feel like there's a reality there that when they bring that into the storyline, it just comes off authentically and they're smart to weave that into the story. And if it had happened more often in WWE, we might not all be falling asleep during some of their quote unquote premium events.
I
I
agree.
agree. Yeah, I know. I agree with Jack what you just said, but I also agree with what Juicy was saying. I often tell people who ask me about podcasting and public access TV. And I also gave you this advice. Take yourself and up that 1,000 and be you. And don't worry about what other people say. And you're going to be entertained, and you're going to entertain the people watching and listening to you. Um, the opening match for any card sets the pace for the card. And Juicy, you did that Friday night. You came out there, you stole the show, opening match, boom, set the pace from bell to bell. It was perfect because you were you. You went out there and, like I said, you entertained. It was perfect. And I live by the same philosophy, and I try to get this across to you many times, Jack. Just be yourself. Go out there, amp it up by 1,000, and have fun. If you have fun, the people watching are going to have fun. The people listening are going to have fun.
Yeah, and like, what's the worst thing? Like, you go out there and something doesn't work. Okay, try it again or try something else different. Like, what's the worst thing that's gonna happen? You got to go back to
Exactly.
the drawing board. Oh well, that's life. It happens.
Yeah.
So try what feels right for you to you, and then if it doesn't work, go back to the drawing board and present something else.
Right, 100%. Eric Hunting is back with a question. I'm sure he's got a specific instance in mind. He says, "Is Juicy willing to ever take a guitar shot again?"
Oh, she's laughing.
Yeah, and I won't tell my mom again because her natural reaction was the best thing ever.
Ooh,
She
what
said,
happened?
she says, "You're grounded from wrestling." I said, "With what authority? I live on my own, and I'm a grown woman."
Speaking of mom and speaking of dad, how were the parental units when you told them you were going to become a pro wrestler?
So I think my dad was
Come
pretty
forward a little
excited.
bit. Come forward a
Oh,
little
I'm
bit.
sorry. I know. Okay, I'll just give a look up there. My dad was super. I think my dad was super excited, and still to this day is very much still like, yeah, that's my kid. Because growing up, my dad grew up doing a lot of sports, all the sports, track and basketball and football, and was on track to go to college on a football scholarship, but things didn't work out. So very much so invested of like, hey, I got my athlete. Because my brother did, not saying that, like, not taking away from technical wrestling and grappling and like, the collegiate style wrestling, but my brother did that. My dad wanted him to do other things. He was happy with that. So then once my brother did the technical wrestling in high school, and then I followed it up with pro wrestling, he was like, yeah. um and then my mom, not so much, who also, let me put into perspective, my father is a retired Marine of 22 years, and my mother is a nurse. So my mother, being a nurse, was like, no, I did not instill the value of you and your education to then go on and pay for 6.5 years of schooling and very expensive pieces of paper from Westfield State, then decide to go into pro wrestling. I was like, look, I've got my degrees. Like, I'm still doing life. I still have my shoot job and wrestling, and still following my love for teaching dance on the side as well. But she was just like, just because I'm a nurse doesn't mean you could come to me for every bump and bruise and cut and but do I? Absolutely. And does she welcome me with open arms? Gave me a hospital bill or two? Absolutely.
What was mom and dad's first reaction to the first match that they ever seen?
They just didn't know what to think. They I would like show them clips here and there from training when I would record spots to track my progression. But it doesn't do it justice compared to like seeing your child live in the
Yeah.
ring, right? Um, so my dad just kind of sat there and took it all in. I look over at my mom. Of course, it's my mother, my brother, my sister, my grandparents. They took the trip down from upstate New York. Keep in mind, my grandfather hasn't seen or talked about wrestling since back in the day, like WWF. Like, so he's sitting there, like, just oh, this is wrestling now. My grandmother's sitting there laughing, but also like, are you okay? Are you okay? And my mom's just sitting there like, what is my child doing? So yeah, we had a spectrum of reactions the first match.
That must have been awesome.
Oh, it was a time. And then afterwards, after every match my grandmother goes to, she's not able to go to all of them. Like I said, she's upstate New York. But when she does come around and she's in attendance, she's like, "What about that thing they did where it looks like they did this to you? Did that hurt? Or that wasn't very nice. I was about to go up to the ring and yell at that girl." I'm like, "All right, Nana, sit down. It's okay."
Jack,
Way to go
your
fight
next
my
question.
match for me.
Maybe you should have Nana walk you to the ring and be your manager one time.
Yeah, maybe I need Nana as a valet.
Yeah, there you go.
She could be my juice girl.
There you go. Yeah. Jack, your
well,
next
kind of
question.
leads into what I was going to say next is that one thing that I thought when again, I apologize if I've missed something pivotal because I've seen you a few times. And one thing I've often thought about is I've likened what you're doing to someone like Big Game Leroy, whose gimmick I think is one of the best in all of wrestling. I'm sure you know his work.
It's great. I
Yeah.
love Leroy.
I absolutely love what he does on every level.
Mhm.
And I thought about you and I was like, so I wonder, like, is there like a personified juice bottle in the future? Is there like a Popeye, like drinking the juice and like, juicing up and all of a sudden, going off the top rope or a flying shoulder, so like, do you feel like, I feel like your gimmick, there's so much room to grow and go in different directions.
So I do, given I get the opportunity to, I use it as part of, often play around with the idea, like depending on, if there's notes from the promoter, obviously that's first, number one, get notes on what the promotion wants for your match. But depending on like the show and the venue and the feel for what our perceived audience may be, I've done things where I've offered like a chug off. I did that with Jessie Nolan. I don't know if you're familiar with her. I did that when I went up and worked a student showcase show for Limitless. She trains out of the Limitless dojo. I've done chugging spots. I offer cheers sometimes to my opponents and offer them a juice in the beginning before I lock up. I will also tend to sometimes use my juice as fuel for the comeback and pop. It's exactly Popeye with the spinach. I'm dead. I crawl for it. I mean, you saw this Friday
Yep.
Night Live in
Yep.
person.
Yep.
Juice it up. Their heels coming up. Turn around. And hit the comeback and rev it up from there. So I gotta find different ways I want to find more creative ways to incorporate it within my gimmick other than those examples I just gave. But so far I'm proud of where it's come and only excited to see where it can further progress.
So am I reading too much into the hair color and some of the gear choices? But is your favorite juice either orange or red? Like, are you a cranberry juice gal?
I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's whatever juice I can find on hand these days because everything's in low supply. But yes, I do gravitate towards a nice fruit punch, or I like a pineapple mango.
Nice.
So
you
that
can't
would be
go
like
wrong.
the orange.
Love it. Love it. I'm drinking papaya right now. Oh, I don't know if we
Alright.
can see it. There we go. No, it's kind of
It's
pink.
No, it disappeared.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Eric.
Yeah, Eric is back with a question or a comment. He says, I have a bottle of juicy fuel in my wrestling room.
Hey, keep your private life to yourself, buddy.
No. Juicy Fuel for the public does exist. He's not. It's real. I promise. I probably sold it to him or his daughter.
Nice. Yeah. Eric, now, here's a question I have for you. And this is only from a selfish fan point of view. But if you were to get to that point soon where you just decide, you know what, I'm sending out some links to my what I think are my best matches. I want to work for this and that company. Can you please do it for Beyond? Because there's so many people I'd love to see you wrestle at Beyond.
I would love to. I've been able to go out. Fortunately, I have I like to call her my wrestling fairy godmother, or one of Delmi Exo. I've gone
Oh,
out with Delmi a handful of times to WWR Plus to like kind of show face, see some people. She's been lucky. She's been gracious enough to take me under her wing and let me accompany her on the drive and stuff, to show face and start to do some of that networking. But I would love to go out there and be able to, even just to say I worked them once, if not like regularly, or like, a handful of times here and there, would be, it's on my list, trust me. It's
Nice.
on my list.
Nice, because I think you would fit in so well. And I love Blitzkrieg, and I'd love to see you keep coming to Blitzkrieg. But when I go to some of the Beyond shows and I see some of the matches, like I've often thought of other wrestlers who I think would work really well there, and you're one of the ones I thought. And Delmy has been doing Beyond lately also.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, maybe you versus Delmy.
Put it out there. Drew, are you watching? No, just kidding.
Yeah, well, as Lewis likes to point out, I was Delmy and Rip's neighbor for quite a while, and I just moved recently. So I've
he
been
was stalking
fortunate.
him
Yeah.
badly.
So I've been fortunate enough to know those guys a little bit, and of course, go over to the grind and everything, which is really fun.
Oh
But
yeah, they're
anyway,
great people.
yeah, they're super cool, and I feel like the grind is another promotion that is very new and up and coming, and that would be amazing. Like you against Willow would be really incredible.
Ooh, that would
Oh
be a
my God, don't
tremendous
even
match.
say, I would cry at the opportunity to get that match. Are you kidding me? She is on my list of like top 10 women I would love to work.
Well, that was a question that we were going to save for the end that I usually do was who would you like to wrestle? Who do you want to work with? And I think you against Willow would be just unbelievable. But who would you like to work with?
So,
Let's go now.
I mean, Willow, she's phenomenal. I love what she does in the ring. I would love to work. God, there's so many people. So many people. Um,
I'd like to thank the Academy. No.
it's crazy, and I think I'm just getting so specific to like New England, but like
All
I
right,
would
all right,
love.
give us three. Just give us three, not counting Willow.
Okay, so Willow, not counting Willow.
Not.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
How about
God, if
Skylar?
she saw this. Yeah, I was just gonna say Skylar. I've known Skylar in my personal life before wrestling for quite some time. She is amazing. Again, another person who's trained at Kevin's at one point, and she is amazing. Pat, like, gone to her for advice and everything. She's phenomenal. I'd love to. I worked her in a both of the next two people I'm about to mention. I've worked in a six woman tag. I'd love to work Erica Lee, and I would love to work Gabby Ortiz.
Okay.
How about a rematch with Becca? Didn't you guys meet in Limitless?
Worked Becca. Yep, I worked Becca at Limitless. She was also my tag partner for a show I did for a company that ran once about a year ago, actually almost to the day. Heartstrong Gumi. There was like this big super show type of situation, and I was in a tag. It was me and Becca versus the Higher Society back at the time.
Nice. Well, Becca was just our last guest, so I think it would just be ironic if we could have you two collide sometime soon. We could somehow take credit for it. Making the stars align, right, Lewis? Isn't that what we do?
Yes, definitely, for sure. That would be awesome. But now my brain is my brain right now is like just clicking on Juicy versus Willow. I think that would be phenomenal. Absolutely, just phenomenal. Juicy, have you ever been noticed out in the crowd, walking through Stop and Shop, walking through Target, Walmart, and somebody going, "Oh my God!"
I've had a couple instances. Two of which, so the first time it happened, my dad was coming with me to the RMV to like help me figure out some car stuff because the most I know about cars is you put a key in, you turn it on, it goes vroom.
Me too. We
So
have a lot in common. Oh my God.
so smart.
Yes.
And like, what did you know? It? I have a bachelor's and master's degree, but that's all I know about cars. Um, and so I was going to the West Springfield RMV, and I'm walking up, and I'm going to get in line because this was over COVID when you had to make appointments, check in, all that stuff. And I'm walking up to the person to give my name, and I hear Juicy, and I turn around, I'm like, what? Like I was so taken aback. We're in the middle of downtown Springfield. Like what? But sure enough, it was a fan from a show I had. And I hadn't even worked recently. It was like when COVID. Excuse me. Oh dear. When COVID was very much so, like tapings weren't even happening yet. No live events. I was like, wow. Okay, cool. I'm still relevant somehow.
You're like
Um,
Jack? No.
I mean, hey, if you followed me to the R&B, hey, no, I'm just kidding. Um, and then one of the other times, it wasn't that they saw me in person, but it was a fan that had a follow-up message, and so I open because I keep my on Facebook, I keep my wrestling account separate from my personal account, and I'm on my Big Juicy fan page, and I get a message. I open it, and I think it was he's 13 or 14 years old, young fan, and he goes, but Juicy, are you from Westfield? I was like, and he goes, I think I just saw you coming out of Cumbies on this road, and I'm like, Cumberland Farms. Yep, nice to see you, bud. Like those are the two that stand out to me, and I've gotten not even a fan moment, but another worker I see me at dance competition because he was I was there supporting my students. He was there supporting his stepdaughter. It was a small circle. I ran into it was Aaron Morrison. I ran
Oh.
into him at a dance competition, and he was like, I'm like, yeah, what's up?
So
Yeah,
here's a
wild
question.
times.
Here's a question that you've partially answered already, but I'm going to dig a little more and see if there's anything. So you've already mentioned one of your other passions besides this art form is dance. Are there any other outlets or passions that you have in your life that might say somehow seep into your wrestling work?
So dance is definitely one of the biggest things. I like to think that I am able to get a lot of like the footwork coordination a little bit easier when it came to things in the beginning stages of training, thanks to my dance background. I grew up and I still actively, like I said, I teach, but I started doing all forms of dance at the age of 1.5. But tap dance is my baby. I am loud, obviously, having this conversation. You could see I'm loud and out there and not afraid to make some noise. So, strap 2 shoes with 2 pieces of metal each on each foot, and I'm good to go. Um, my dance background will always stay with me, um, regardless of how old I get. I will always be super invested in tap dance. Music is another big hobby of mine. I just love music, all forms of music, really, except for, and I might get some heat for this, so I apologize in advance to everyone. I am not the biggest fan of country music. The most country I get is like Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, that type of country.
Like real country?
Yeah, like that folky, like yeah.
Willie?
Yes, Willie, exactly. And then I guess another big passion of mine that I don't necessarily bring into the in-ring aspect of it, but maybe where I show more of my compassion in wrestling with my connection with the younger fans that I have is I am a big advocate for individuals with developmental disabilities. I work with
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Listen, I work with children on the autism spectrum. Very, some not as severe cases, some very severe. So being an advocate and supporting individuals with disabilities of any kind is like a very big, important passion of mine that I hold very dear to my heart.
Nice. I was just approached today about doing a workshop for students of that you were just speaking of, like a group of students with autism and different spectrum. Sorry, on the spectrum in different areas. I don't know if I'm articulating that correctly, but so that's really interesting, and I think it does show, like when I've seen you interact with young fans. Again, it's authentic. It's not like, oh, here's
Yep.
some little kids, I got to put on a smile. It's obvious that you're not one of those people.
Now, Juicy, do you work with charities? Speaking now, I'm going to be totally serious now. With working on the spectrum and autism, do you work with charities?
I don't work specifically with charities, but I do work for a nonprofit organization.
Okay.
Um, they're deemed a nonprofit organization. My shoot job is through what's called the May Institute. They have a lot of factors in which they help provide services for individuals on the spectrum. They do
Okay.
in-home services, schools, things of that nature. But I would love to get linked up with a charity if I could, by any means, to
Okay.
help.
Afterwards, please hang out with us. Jack is probably going to ask you anyway, but I do
Of
work
course.
with a charity for Autism Speaks, and I am sure they would
Autism
love to have
Speaks.
someone of your caliber. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Let's
All
let's
right, so
let's talk.
afterwards, please hang out. Jack, we're running out of time, but I
We are.
do know you always have a question about gear, so why don't you ask Juicy about her gear?
Well, I kind of covered the gear part because I was hoping you were going to reveal that Hardcore Holly was one of your favorite wrestlers ever, but I was corrected when you mentioned the punk rock connection. That makes perfect sense. But do you
Yeah.
have any like new gear you're going to be unveiling? Like, I guess the question I am curious about is how much impact do you have? Because it sounds like you're a designer, you give them a lot of carte blanche. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, so my gear designer, I work with No Gimmick Gear out of, I believe she's in Brooklyn, New York. Yes, her name is Lori. She is
Brooklyn.
fantastic. When I say I've never met someone who, like, I feel like I should like really be best friends with, that I've never met in real life, it's her. Um, I give her like little things here and there, and I say, this is what I'm looking for, maybe let's draw from this, and she just takes it, has a blast doing it, and gives me masterpieces, in my opinion. I've never been dissatisfied with a set of gear that I've gotten from her.
Yeah,
um
nice.
I actually have one that I'm waiting to put a deposit down on. Got a little drop skirt action, a little sneak peek detail drop here. It's got a little skirt action going on, still the same cut. Um, but got one main fruit on it at the time being, based on the sketch. And it'll be a nice compliment to the orange hair. So that's all I'm going to give you for now.
Oh, cool. All right.
Awesome.
Awesome. We'll be
All
looking
right.
for it. So we want to
So,
make sure we give you a chance to promote any upcoming appearances, all social media, because we want to make sure that our listeners are able to jump in and follow you and pick up any merch that you might have.
Absolutely. So unfortunately, I am not up on the bandwagon with the times that I don't have a designated online store or, link I can direct you to. But if you slide into my DMs, you can direct message me and I will ship merch out to you. I got t-shirts, I have bags, I have 8x10s. If you want a bottle of Juicy Fuel, I can send that your way.
Nice.
So hit up my Big Juicy wrestling page on Facebook, the Book Face, for all merch needs, or come to me at a show. I always have merch on hand. Um, let's see. You can find my wrestling page on Twitter and Instagram. The handles are both the same. It's at symbol. It's Big Juicy. Juicy has 3 Y's at the end because Juicy with 1 Y was taken. So it's Big Juicy Y on those platforms. And in terms of upcoming appearances for the month of June, I've got a nice schedule where I've had a little bit of downtime, and those weekends to be a human are very, very few between, and they're very needed. But for the month of June so far, I have on the books, I will be wrestling this Sunday at Kevin Landry's Pro Wrestling Combine at a Shut Up and Wrestle, which is June 12th. And then on June 25th in Bridgewater, Mass, I will be in a triple threat match against myself, Nakoma Tala, and Isana at NWWE on the 25th of June.
All
Nice.
right. Jack, before time runs out, where can people find you, lovely artwork, and get a commission?
All right.
And us.
Well, Juicy, please, if you don't mind hanging with us for a moment before we go off the air, just want to make sure you get to say bye to you. But if you're interested in supporting the arts and mine specifically, go to patreon.com, look for Jack Purcell. It's the only place you can see my artwork in its entirety. I put some details on Insta and all that, but my pro wrestling artwork, my comic book artwork, lots of cool stuff there. There's a piece coming up for Blitzkrieg. It's got 8 different people on it. It's wild. So that's patreon.com. Check me out there. You can find me at Jack Purcell Inc. INK on Instagram and Facebook. You could find me on Twitter, lurking at Jack Purcell 38. I'm kind of quiet. And then Faces and Heels on Facebook, Faces and Heels Podcast on Instagram. And then this guy over here.
You can find me each and every Monday night with that Wonder Woman, Jamie Dolan, on The Angry Geek Show, broadcasting live through the interwebs. And you can find me every Tuesday night with my tag team partner, my brother from another mother, the one and only ink-slinging Jack Purcell, right here on the Faces and Heels podcast as we stream live to you through The Angry Geek Show YouTube channel. And you can find both Angry Geeks and Faces and Heels on Greenfield Public Access, South Hadley Public Access, and other public access television stations coming toward you. I am Lewis, that's Jack, that's Juicy, and stay safe, Colorado.
This has been an Earplug Podcast presentation, found on earplugpod-cast.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, and wherever your favorite podcasts are found.